We know that American capitalism is morally right because its chief elements, private ownership, the profit motive, and the competitive market are wholesome and good. They are compatible with God's laws and the teachings of the Bible.
If Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd be labeled a socialist. J. Edgar Herod would call him communist. Lock him up with 3 nails and a cot and foil his anti-American plot for standing up for the have-nots. Yes, he'd be an icon of terror to rich conservatives, but an icon on the t-shirts of rebels alongside of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. He'd be an above-ground revolutionary, speaking out against the 7 churches who worship crucifixes cast in gold, crusading from the poor and oppressed, who are often labeled savage and terrorist. Yes, if Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd be labeled a socialist. He would walk bare feet on streets paved in poverty, leading protests against slumlords owning rat and syringe-infested property while they properly rest in gated country clubs. Conservative white, conservative right Christians would call him far left and think him part of destruction to American fundamentals for simply recognizing the downtrodden obvious, and obviously capitalist preachers of Greater Gucci and Amani Baptist churches would turn him away from the front door because he is not dressed to be blessed. Yes, if Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd be labeled a socialist. You could catch him at union rallies casting out hypocrisy, causing it to enter back into the swine who in God they trust through dollar bill Bible pages, the ones with the large print. He would become public enemy #1 for giving equal health care to the wealthless. He'd be an icon to the helpless for speaking out against capitalist imperialism. He'd be deported, but not until after he's flogged, marked, and arrested. Yes,
the system doesn't seem to be providing for the well-being of all the people. And that's what makes it something contrary to the Jesus who said, "Blessed are the poor, woe to the rich." Right out of St. Luke's Gospel.
If Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd be labeled a socialist. Uncle Tom Negroes and their mega churches would call him thuggish. Not because of what he would wear, not because of his dreadlocked hair, but because he would dare to put money in collection paper bags of the homeless instead of stainless steel collection plates. They would label him thuggish because he would hang out with the so-called thugs and thieves or niggas they separate from, rather than guest preach and increase the ratings of TD fakes. Boisterous, proud, modern-day Christians who send young teenage knights overseas on modern-day crusade missions would call him heathen because he would tell the indigenous peoples, shalom, salam, peace, and what they believe in. If Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd be labeled a socialist. Let's say he had skin of brass and hair like lamb's wool. Klansmen would burn crosses in their own yard and call themselves pagan because he would not fit the depiction of Michelangelo's Sistine cousin. He'd be kissed on the cheek by Judas politicians and be betrayed for 30 pieces of oil. A crown of thorns embezzled with Congolese diamonds from the holy Rolex of Reverend Dollar would be placed upon his head. King of the sufferers, they'd call him, as he is nailed to a crucifix forcefully constructed by Angola, Rikers, and Guantanamo Bay prisoners held without charges. If Jesus walked the earth in the 21st century, he'd see the contradiction and the hypocrisy done in his name.
I mean, do you think that Jesus was essentially a socialist?
Yeah, I do.
They think Wall Street's a holy place. What do you think Jesus would think of capitalism?
I think he would simply refuse to